There's a lot of turmoil in Quebec right now. The Legault government wants to impose a new compensation system. And so a lot of doctors in Quebec are looking to move their practice outside of Quebec and are looking for neighboring provinces.
Call 1-800-DOUG-FORD, all the docs, and come by, call me on my cell phone. It's on the internet, and we'll have you working real quick. We'd love to see the doctors, nurses. We'd like to see anyone in healthcare come to Ontario because we're a growing community.
We could have stayed at the table and negotiate with the doctors. They decided to say my way or the highway instead of negotiating. The doctors, what I'm telling them, please stay here. We know that you want to stay here. Most of you have your families, your homes. You chose Quebec. Please stay here.
All right, those are all the clips I was going to use in her question, but James Mennie, you got him. So let's begin. James Mennie over at the Montreal Gazette. Follow today, and of course, that Doug Ford clip, I mean, that's priceless. The idea about rolling out the red carpet, 1-800-DOUG-FORD. Come on, that's fantastic.
No, but the thing is, I mean, and this is, don't get me wrong, I love being on the radio, but this is one of the times where the fact you cannot see Doug Ford's face. And in fact, I would ask our listeners, if you have a chance, go and try and dig up the clip online, because he's being blah blah, and he does actually list his cell phone number online, as that was part of his trademark as a politician. But the thing is, if you take a look at his face as he's saying this, it's like he cannot. This is my interpretation. I cannot believe the guy living next door to me is so stupid that I'm getting questions about whether I'm going to take on the doctors who are leaving his jurisdiction, because this is completely and utterly unbelievable. And once again, and as we've mentioned earlier this week, Aaron, he seems to be getting a bit of a head of steam, courtesy of Francois Legault and company, but Liberal leader Pablo Rodriguez is now making the case, and he's making it in French, and people are paying attention to it, that they could have negotiated this. This is typical Legault, bulldoze through, invoke closure, as he says, my way or the highway. But the third clip that we didn't hear in my segment, but we just heard on the news, I don't know about you, buddy, but I was listening to Christian Dubé, and if you ever could hear the sound of a guy blinking without moving his eyes, I think we're hearing it now. I think it's beginning to dawn on these morons in Quebec City that they have finally found a line to cross. They aren't slapping around Anglos or Muslim women or immigrants. They're slapping around health professionals who are absolutely essential to the functioning of the healthcare network. And I think they're realizing right now that they are choking on a piece of legislation that they never should have bit off in the first place. I might be wrong, but isn't it interesting that we have heard absolutely zip from Francois Legault on this, that basically the point man on this is Christian Dubé. Pablo Rodriguez is running riot over this whole law, and you've got the situation now where people may disagree with me, but at this point, the most popular politician in Canada, Doug Ford, is turning around and implicitly suggesting that the guy next to him, the guy living next door to him in Quebec, doesn't know what he's doing.
I'm kind of with you on this one. I'm waiting now for Francois Legault to react, because someone is going to ask him, obviously, about the Doug Ford comment. You can sit there and shake the guy's hand and smile and say, we're in the same. And now here he is basically saying to you, as you just said, thanks for making this dumb decision, which opens the door for Ontario and, and obviously New Brunswick. Some people have decided to go there as well. I'm curious, Jim, you heard, I don't know if you heard Christian Dubé, he was asked about this, the story that 100 doctors apparently have already started, to make plans to leave, to which he said, that doesn't mean they're leaving. It means they're just looking into leaving. So let's not kind of put the cart before the horse. Does the government not sort of understand or choose not to understand that this is actually happening?
Oh, it's option two. This is denial big time, because remember, this is a government that never admits that it's wrong about anything whatsoever, even though it's wrong about most of the things that it does. But yeah, as I say, I'm getting a real vibe, and it wasn't yesterday, it was today. I'm getting a real vibe between Doug Ford, between Christian Dubé, between the field day that Pablo Rodriguez is having. And maybe I've missed it, and I'll apologize to the PQ in advance. Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon has gone radio silent ever since he made the mistake of saying, we'll keep this law if we're elected as the next government. Yeah. I really am getting the impression they realize they've done something horribly wrong. They're going to try and find some kind of face-saving way to weasel out of it. I also find it interesting that, and as just before we came in, I'm sure you heard the spot that was bought on CJAD by the Federation of Medical Professionals, essentially pointing out this is not about us, this is about you. We're just trying to improve the system. You can bet folding money the same ads are running in French. All of a sudden, Francois Legault has found a minority, which you have to admit there are fewer doctors. Doctors are a professional minority in Quebec that he can't bully and kick around. And I think maybe between now and this weekend, you are going to see Francois Legault perhaps, or maybe not him personally, but one of his flunkies are going to have to come out and try and sweep up the wreckage of the mess he and his colleagues have made of this legislation, and quite frankly, as if it was possible, an even bigger mess of the Quebec healthcare network.
So I guess we can move on and talk about this other story today. So you mentioned the OQLF. The story I saw, Jim, is this where you're referring to the idea that they say young Quebecers are abandoning French? Is this the story?
Yeah. Now remember, the OQLF is saying that famous 18 to 34 demographic is not so much abandoning French, they're not obsessed with French. And, if it happens that they're in a store and somebody has difficulty speaking to them in French, that they'll speak to them in English, which apparently, just from the tone of these observations that I'm seeing in Andy Riga's story in the Gazette, it's like, what's wrong with these people? But the fact of the matter is, and we have said it on the show a gazillion times and in all kinds of contexts, this is not a matter of trying to, as Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon of the PQ would suggest, having French Quebecers die out. This is the reality. English, not just in Canada or Quebec or any, English is the lingua franca of the entire planet. It's not that difficult a language to speak. More and more people are dealing with it. But the idea that the Office du Québécois de la langue française hasn't figured that out, that they haven't figured out that when you go online, you're 90% of the time you're dealing in English. And the idea, maybe I'm too old, but when I hear them sort of like become scratching their heads over, like these people, they'll if they see a clerk is having problems speaking, they'll talk to them in English. Well, you know what? It's as far as I'm concerned, it's pragmatism, because you're in there to get stuff. You're not there to give someone a language lesson or waste your time. And second, there's something called courtesy. You know what I mean? It's the same reason that whenever I speak to anyone in Quebec, when it's a cold open to our conversation, I begin in French, because the odds say that person will be a francophone, and it's simple politesse to speak French as your first option. But the idea that I'm feeling these decades of isolation, these decades of building their own little treehouse about how they're under siege by those terrible, terrible English speakers and how everybody's out to get them, is coming home to roost and saying, well, why is it our young people are behaving this way? And in fact, they're behaving this way because everyone behaves this way, because that's the way we live on the planet Earth. But the other irony, of course, is, and I'm sure there'll be somebody who'll try to, no, it's not the same thing. Remember, we had all of those interpretations of surveys saying that Quebec's sovereignty is taken off like a rocket with young Quebecers between 18 and 34, because I'm trying to marry that to the findings of this project that the OQLF is doing. I mean, as it is, they're spending $200,000, which is chump change, to poll 6,000 respondents in that demographic, various linguistic groups as well. Will they make their findings public?
Well,
Who
yeah.
knows? But
don't you find that odd, Jim? And I know this has come up before, the idea that we're doing this study, but we're not necessarily going to let you know what we find out. Why?
Because it could be completely embarrassing for them. That's why. It could be because the idea is okay. Here's my take, Aaron. The Quebecers 18 to 34 are not indifferent to their culture, their identity, their history. They are simply infinitely more confident than a bunch of gibbering old men like Francois Legault and God knows how many other Québécois commentators think that Quebecers are, because that was their generation. They had been raised to think they were inferior, and that the English, everything wrong in your life is somebody else's fault. Yeah. And we now have a generation of Quebecers who actually figured it out, who are literally in tune with the rest of the planet thanks to the internet, who are getting along just fine. And that just scares the hell out of the people who have made linguistic paranoia a cottage industry in Quebec for the past 50 years. Now, maybe that's why. If they get a survey return that says this is why it's happening, that they're not, a lack of confidence, it's not a threat, but is in fact the way Quebec is going to survive into the next century, and people will still be speaking French 50 years from now, rather than passing yet another collection of absolutely ludicrous laws that will appeal to a small, very narrow sliver of Quebecers who are employed in media or politics, and ignore the reality not just in Quebec but on the planet. But I mean, but this is it. I love that they're doing this, if only because I think they're finally figuring out how to understand English.
Can I just point one thing out? The idea of creating fear. Can you imagine, Jim? I'm probably reaching a little too far here. That if this survey comes back and sort of corroborates their fear that this is happening and the reason it's happening, and let's say it's the internet, that they could one day decide, you know what? If you want to get on the internet and you live in Quebec, you can only get on in French.
You can't do that. That's beyond them. I for a second, I thought you were going to say they were going to ban 18 to 34-year-olds. But the thing is, the reality is, you're going to take on the internet. Good luck with that. Mm-hmm. And you're going to make it French only. Good luck with that. Let's take a step back. Remember, think of all the other things that the Legault government is utterly incapable of doing, and we're talking about, analog, basic things, whether it's the delivery of educational services, healthcare services. I don't think they're going to go on and take the internet. And by the way, in case you're wondering whether they might be a little nervous about, delving into the wiring behind, the World Wide Web, Aaron, I got one word for you: sackclick. So you know what? Maybe they just want to lay off of that for a while.
Hey, Jim, before I let you go, Brian tells me we just got, just now, literally, Francois Legault's reaction in English to the Doug Ford statement. Take a listen. God. Here we go.
We're making important changes right now in our healthcare system. It's emotional. It's not easy. And this morning, Ontario Premier Doug Ford said that he invites doctors from Quebec to move to Ontario.
Yeah.
This is unacceptable.
Oh.
It's a total lack of judgment. And right now we have very important challenges in all provinces about our healthcare systems. But it's not time to take shots at each other. It's time to work together.
Jim, it's unacceptable.
I got to tell you, Aaron, if you listen, you and I have been listening to this guy for years. You listen to his tone of voice. That guy has obviously taken a gut punch with this, and to turn around, it's a cheap shot. Listen, look who's talking here about all the other things we could talk about Francois Legault when it comes to cheap shots. But the fact is, I think maybe, as I said at the beginning, I think the scale of their bungling is finally beginning to dawn upon them, and don't be surprised if you see a lot more blinking on the part of Monsieur Dubé, and perhaps even on the part now of Francois Legault. But I got to tell you, Aaron, if we're close to ending this madness, tant mieux, as we say in these parts.
We'll leave it at that, Jim. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Canadian women are looking for more out of themselves, their businesses, their elected leaders, and the world around them.
And that's why we're thrilled to introduce the Honest Talk podcast.
I'm Jennifer Stewart.
And I'm Catherine Clark. And in this podcast, we interview Canada's most inspiring women.
Entrepreneurs, artists, athletes, politicians, and newsmakers, all at different stages of their journey.
So if you're looking to connect, then we hope you'll join us.
Listen to the Honest Talk podcast on iHeartRadio or wherever you listen to your podcasts.